The story begins as we're thrown back 80 years ago to witness Arthur Spiderwick, frantically working in his study, surrounded by jars filled with bizarre creatures and specimens that would make any scientist jealous. This guy is clearly onto something big, and he's racing against time to document it all in a leather-bound book. The moment Arthur stamps his mark on the cover, all hell breaks loose. Inhuman roars echo from outside, and sounds of creatures that definitely aren't from any normal forest. Arthur discovered something he probably shouldn't have, and now they're coming for him. 80 years later, we see a family led by their mother Helen Grace, moving with her 3 kids to the Spiderwick estate after her recent divorce. We've got twin boys Jared and Simon, plus their older sister Mallory. While Simon and Mallory are at least trying to make the best of it, Jared is having none of it. This kid is angry at the world and refuses to talk to anyone and basically radiates "I don't want to be here" energy. The house itself is giving off serious haunted mansion vibes, creaky floors, dark corners, and that general feeling that someone's watching you. Helen and Simon immediately notice footsteps when no one's there, which is always a great sign when you're trying to start fresh somewhere new. Things get interesting fast. Mallory, who's apparently a fencing prodigy, gets into a sword fight with Jared. She's determined to make this move work, even if it harms her brother in the process. That night, Jared tries to comfort Simon with the classic "dad's coming back for us" routine, but here's where things get weird. There's salt scattered all over the windowsills. They also find a picture of Arthur's daughter, Aunt Lucinda, who was supposedly taken to an asylum for claiming her father was kidnapped by fairies. That same night brings the first real sign that something supernatural is happening. Mallory can't find her fencing medal, and Helen's car keys have vanished. The family immediately turns on each other. When Helen gets a call from her ex-husband, Jared lights up like a Christmas tree. His dad promises to pick him up soon, and suddenly Jared's convinced Helen is the villain keeping them apart. That's when Jared starts hearing sounds in the walls. Not just creaky old house sounds, something's actively moving around in there. When he starts poking holes with a broom, Helen assumes he's just having anger issues again. But when Mallory and Simon hear it too, they know something's up. Mallory takes matters into her own hands and smashes the wall with the broom, revealing a hidden dumbwaiter filled with all their missing items, including her medal and their mom's keys. Everyone immediately assumes Jared is behind it. Jared uses the dumbwaiter to haul himself up to the attic, and what he finds there changes everything. It's Arthur's old study, complete with strange pictures, mysterious books, and a chest containing the holy grail of supernatural knowledge, Arthur Spiderwick's field guide to the fantastical world around you. But the house doesn't want him to have it. As soon as he finds the book, he sees a message written in the dust saying, "Jared Grace, leave this place." But Jared's curiosity is stronger than his survival instincts. Back in his room, Jared finds a note commanding him not to read the book, but he proceeds and tears off the binding anyway. The moment he opens it, all hell breaks loose outside, roars and screams echoes after. The book reveals Arthur's life work, documenting all the invisible creatures living alongside humans. Some are harmless, some are helpful, but some want to destroy everything. Enter Mulgarath, the main antagonist, an evil ogre shapeshifter who's basically the supernatural equivalent of a serial killer. That night, Mallory wakes up screaming. Someone or something has tied her long hair to the bedpost while she slept. Everyone immediately blames Jared, because he's the troubled kid, but Jared didn't do it. Someone else is in the house and they're just getting started. The next day, Jared decides to make peace with whatever's causing the chaos. Following the book's advice, he creates a nest for the house brownie, a creature whose home was destroyed when Mallory smashed the wall. He uses honey and crackers as bait. And it works. Meet Thimbletack, a tiny elf-like creature who's been living in the house and causing all the mischief. But when Thimbletack realizes Jared opened the forbidden book, he transforms into a fat green boggart and goes absolutely ballistic, hurling objects at Jared. Turns out Arthur wanted the book kept safe forever, and Jared just broke the one rule that mattered. While Jared's making friends with angry house spirits, Simon is outside looking for his missing cat. That's when invisible creatures grab him and drag him away into the forest. Thimbletack gives Jared a seeing stone ring so he can see the invisible creatures, and what Jared sees is terrifying short and menacing goblins carrying his brother away like a piece of luggage. Jared races into the forest and finds a goblin camp complete with hanging cages around a campfire. In one cage, he meets Hogsqueal, a pig-like creature who gives Jared permanent sight by spitting into his eyes. Simon is brought before an old man who interrogates him about the field guide. The old man seems reasonable enough, until he transforms into Mulgarath, the evil ogre shapeshifter. Simon returns to get the book, but Jared sees through the deception and the twins fight. During their scuffle, Redcap, the general of the goblins, spots the book and lunges for it. The brothers barely escape back to the house, which is protected by a circle of mushrooms. Mallory is outside the protective circle when goblins attack her. She fights them off with her fencing skills, leaving green blood on her sword and taking out one of Redcap's eyes. With Mom at work and the house surrounded by goblins, the kids are on their own. They try to destroy the book by setting it on fire, but the flames go out and the book remains intact. The goblins start chanting for the book like the world's most terrifying football crowd. Simon suggests visiting Aunt Lucinda at the asylum, since she was telling the truth about the fairies all along. Jared and Mallory take a shortcut through the sewers while Simon distracts the goblins at the front door. Redcap sees through their plan and chases Jared and Mallory through the sewers with a massive troll. This thing is clumsy but determined, like a supernatural bulldozer that won't quit. They barely escape when the troll gets run over by a truck driver who's having the worst day of his life. Meanwhile, Simon and Thimbletack realize Jared took the real book and left behind a cookbook. At the asylum, Jared and Mallory meet their great Aunt Lucinda, who's been locked up for decades for telling the truth about fairies. She shows them the fairies gathered by her windowsill, proof that she's not crazy, just cursed with supernatural sight. Lucinda tells them what really happened to Arthur. In a flashback, we see young Lucinda playing near the protective mushroom circle when goblins attack. Arthur rushes to save her, but the fairies take him away as payment for his protection of her. She's lived her entire life fatherless because of his sacrifice. But Arthur is still alive, held captive by sprites in a sacred glade, and there's still hope for a rescue mission. The goblins arrive and burst through the asylum window, tearing pages from the book while Lucinda fights them off with salt. Helen arrives to find everyone screaming, and on the way home, she accuses her kids of using fantasy to avoid dealing with reality. Jared lashes out, telling her that Dad left because all she does is yell at people. Back at the house, Simon is packing tomato sauce since it can burn through goblin skin like acid. When Jared arrives, Thimbletack is furious that Jared took the book, and Jared confesses that goblins stole pages at their camp. At the goblin camp, Mulgarath finds the page that can destroy the protective circle. Mallory and Jared are curious why the goblins are gone and thought they gave up. Suddenly Hogsqueal arrives and tells them that Mulgarath is planning for an attack when the moon rises. Hogsqueal then spits Mallory and Simon in the eyes so they can see him. They then plan to find Arthur and they need to reach the sacred glade, and the only way there is through Arthur's pet griffin, a half-lion, half-bird magical creature. Jared summons the griffin, and all three siblings climb aboard for the most dangerous ride of their lives. The griffin brings them to the sacred glade, where Arthur is still alive after 80 years, kept prisoner by the sprites. Jared tries to explain who he is and what's happening, but Mallory and Simon are completely captivated by the magical song of the sprites. Arthur and Jared have a heart-to-heart about the book and killing Mulgarath, but Jared accuses Arthur of abandoning his family for his obsession with magical creatures. Arthur's been kept in the glade for knowing too much, and he's about to pay the ultimate price for his knowledge. Arthur distracts the sprites with a fake cookbook while the kids escape, and he's presumably killed by the fairies he once studied. The kids arrive in their yard and sees the goblins already there. Moments later, Helen arrives and they stop her and quickly get in the car. They run over a bunch of invisible goblins in the yard. She finally has no choice but to believe that everything is real. That night, the Grace family prepares for war. The protective circle is broken, and the attack begins. Goblins enter through floorboards, windows, and every other opening they can find in the house. The family fights back with tomato sauce, salt, and knives. Mulgarath enters the house and starts attacking them, but they manage to escape. They gather in the kitchen and load all the tomato sauce in the stove and then proceed to hide. Just when Mulgarath and the goblins arrive in the kitchen, Jared secretly lights the matchstick for the ultimate explosion. Just when they think they've won, there's a knock at the door. It's Richard, Jared's dad, who suddenly comes to visit. But Jared knows the truth from Mallory. His dad has no intention of getting back with his mom and has moved on with another woman. Jared asks him the thing he promised to say to him the next time they see each other again. Richard acts confused and doesn't know what Jared wants to hear, so Jared stabs him in the chest, revealing his true identity. Mulgarath gets mad for what happened and attacks them. He then transforms into a snake and chases Jared through the house, eventually cornering him on the roof. Thimbletack tries to defend Jared but gets knocked back by Mulgarath. Jared goes outside through the window while being chased by Mulgarath on the rooftop. Jared slides down the tip of the roof and hanging on for dear life. He sees Hogsqueal on the tree and decided to throw the book into the air. Mulgarath transforms into a raven and flies after the book, not knowing it's a setup for a trap, since Hogsqueal has an appetite for birds. Hogsqueal jumps out in time and satisfyingly eats Mulgarath whole, fulfilling his long-awaited vengeance. Jared falls to the ground and finally admits he wants to stay with his mom. A few weeks later, Lucinda is released from the asylum and reunited with Thimbletack, who's in a cast from his battle with Mulgarath. But the real magic happens when sprites appear with Arthur. Apparently his sacrifice wasn't permanent after all. Arthur confesses he let Lucinda slip away from him and promises never to do that again. They touch hands and Lucinda magically transforms back into a 6-year-old girl. They walk hand in hand into the fairy world, finally reunited after 80 years of separation. The movie ends as the Grace family walks back into the house to start their new life with a much better understanding of what family really means.